bought a bunch of software to transcribe some of these things that we've been saying in class, the teaching part of the class, and I've discovered that Dragon, the state-of-the-art transcription software, thinks I'm inarticulate.
Yeah.
It's not ignoring me and treating me with indifference. It's producing pure nonsense. So I'm recording better this time to see what happens. This is the 5th session of 10 or so, and it's the end of the first phase of this work. It turns out that this wraps up at a really nice point. Last Monday morning I sat down for my usual meditation, and I got so much stuff that belongs in this class. I don't even know what week it belongs on, most of it, but so much stuff came through, and particularly there's a bunch of things that need to be done today to wrap this section up, and I sort of know what the whole thing is about now. And so we'll look at that. The Scriptum Kid Handbook really marks the end of the humanhood phase of this work. And what we realized at the end of 2008, I had the feeling, and several of us did, that was it. We'd done as much as we could do. And the fact is that at that level of work it was done, and it is complete, and it's worth looking at. And there's lots of tools in there for dealing with this humanly, but humanly doesn't get the job done. Doesn't finish the job, as many of you have discovered. So we need to, there's 2 phases to this work. The first phase is to learn to manage your script humanly, which is what we've been talking about in this particular last hour, and what the tools we've been getting out of the book are about. And we learn to manage our script humanly so that we can find some peace, and so that we can not have our lives destroyed, and we'll find peace and quiet and have time so that we can actually do spiritual work. But the important part of this work, the important part of all work, is I can use the term, we want to heal the scripts, although healing is not healing, it's revealing. What we want to do is reveal the truth about the scripts. That's what eliminates the script, is revealing the truth about the script. And the process of that is that, first of all, we have to get rid of our belief in more than one power. We have to come to the belief, the realization, the understanding that God is the only power, that God is in fact omnipresent and omnipotent. Okay? And when we really believe in only one power, then it becomes possible to undo our scripts, because our scripts are all fears, and they're all fears of a power other than God. So the second step, that we'll do as we get rid of the belief in more than one power, is specifically, and Joel talks so much about specific healing, what we need to do is specifically look at each of these deep-seated conditioned beliefs, see it clearly, and know the truth. And if we have arrived at the state, or are arriving at the state where we know there's only one power, then what we really need to do is see specifically that that's not a power, and that it can't kill me. And we, in this process of seeing the truth about this, begin to diffuse and then eventually eliminate the scripts. So what we will do is humanly, in managing the script, confront each script event with the managing the script steps, the contrary example list. But see, that's very human. At the spiritual level, we confront each script event with the recognition of the spiritual truth about that event. Okay? And lot during the next 5 weeks on specific truths and on the truths for specific scripts, and on a lot of other tools to help us humanly as well. But the process is to, as Joel said in the tape I was hearing the other day, consistently confront the lie with the corresponding truth. So that's what this is going to look like, what this work is looking like, and it's what it's going to look like for the rest of it. I say we're at an interesting point. There is no class next week. Next week is set aside for what we call the gathering. If you look at the Leelaa.org website, you'll see a thing called the gathering, and we hold gatherings. A bunch of us get together every month or every 5 or 6 weeks, and we sit down for a weekend of meditation. The gathering is next Saturday and next Sunday, and there's a 2-hour meditation at 10 and another 2-hour meditation at 2 o'clock on both days. So the gang of us, somewhere between 6 and 12 of us, get together and meditate essentially for 8 hours over the weekend. And any of you who want to feel the peace are welcome to come sit in for any one of those 2-hour periods, or all of them. We ask that you don't come for part of one. Don't wander in and out during a particular session, but you're more than happy to join us for any single 2-hour session. And you will probably be able to come in here and feel the peace and experience the presence just because it's here when it happens. That's why we do it, because we get together so that in conjunction we can feel the presence very strongly. It's also available by conference call, and you're welcome to hook up on conference call. It's a different number, so go on the website and check the number and join us there if you want. There's no teaching and no teacher, but we run it sort of like a Quaker meeting where we sit in the silence, and if any one of us is moved to speak, we're free to do so. And then we go back into the silence. And usually there's not much talking, but if Spirit moves you to speak, to express a truth, then feel free to do so. We're all equal, and Spirit will use the one who is most empowered to express that truth, perhaps, the one who has the experience necessary to express that truth. So any event, that's what's happening next week, and then we'll start up again the following week and go for 5 more weeks at least.
On Sunday, where you do the 2 sessions, do you do the meditation at night still too then?
Yes, there's always a meditation. There's a meditation here every Sunday night from 7 to 8. Always. Don't call. Always here. If I'm out of town, I'll have somebody else here to open the house. There's also a meditation here every morning from 5 to 7. And feel free to come for any part of that. I've actually had somebody here for the last 3 mornings, and it's so nice to have somebody come join me. So you can join for any part of that. That's a come and go as you see fit. You can leave early if you're on your way to work. You can come. You don't need to come at 5. I actually start at 4, and I like the first hour myself because I listen to a Joel tape or something. Okay. The other thing that we need to get is that the success of our work in this process will be directly proportional to the amount of work we do. Last week I was asked about 10 or 15 minutes of meditation, and I sort of passed it by and sort of said whatever you're doing is fine, and that your type of meditation doesn't matter, and I got corrected on that. That's not what we should be teaching at this class. That's the right thing for beginners in 12-step programs who are trying to learn the 11th-step or something, but we need to go a lot deeper. We need to understand the process of deepening our spiritual consciousness. I was about to say meditation, but it's more than that. Paul Gorman did a wonderful teaching on this. It is the experience of lots of people that sitting in the silence for hours doesn't do the work. People have sat in the silence for an hour a day or 5 hours a day for 30 years, and it hasn't affected their script sense. We're aware of at least 4 infinite way teachers who sit in the silence a lot, who still had unmanaged script, uneradicated script. So sitting in the silence doesn't work by itself. On the other hand, there are 10,000 Infinite Way students who've been reading every book they can read and going to every teacher they can read, not just Infinite Way students, 10,000 seekers who go to every guru who's in town and read every book they can read and do all this sort of stuff and read and listen to tapes and all that sort of stuff. And they get high while they're reading and listening, and their scripts don't go away. It doesn't work. The point is that neither one works. Both are necessary, and a third thing is necessary, which Paul calls pondering, and Joel calls it pondering too. I've been listening to Joel with much better ears since my experience with Paul. There's a thing called pondering, and Joel calls it contemplative meditation. But the idea is that you take some truth into your mind and ponder it. Think about it. Talk about it to yourself. Ask yourself questions about it. Work with it a little bit. And work and work and work until you come to a point of quiet. And then sit in the silence for a while. And then when your mind starts up again, grab another truth and work with that one. Ponder it. Think about it. Contemplate it. Work it. And explore it. Think what it might mean. Think about other cases where you've heard that word. Play with it, however you do it. And your faculty at doing this will develop as you do it. And when that comes to an end, there'll be silence and sit in the silence. And the silence may be 5 seconds, it may be a minute, it may be 2 minutes, it doesn't matter. The point is to let it dry into the silence and be in the silence, in the present, for a moment. Now, what I do every morning is I come down here at 4 in the morning, and I usually put on a Joel tape. They're usually an hour long. And it takes me 3 hours to get through them, because I'll listen to Joel for 5 or 6 minutes, and then I'll hear something. And usually I make a note if it's for the class. Sometimes I hear and I get, oh, this is for the class, and so I'll make a note. But then I'll sit with it, and I'll sit quietly until my head wanders off on something or starts, thinking about the class or something. Then I'll put the tape back on and listen to it until I hear something. So I listen until I hear something, and then I take what I've heard into the silence and think about it or explore it or let things come to me. Usually now things come to me about that point. And usually it's stuff that winds up. There's 5 pages of stuff here from this week. That kind of stuff comes through. Similarly, if you don't have tapes or CDs or something, a good spiritual book will do the same thing. Read a paragraph or two until you hear something, and then take it into the silence. Think about it, listen to it, take it into the silence. Always go into the silence and listen to see if Spirit wants to expand on that topic for you. And it will. And things will come up, okay? So this is the process that deepens your consciousness. We're now including the reading and listening to tapes and such like. We're getting that new information. We need truth to work with. And then we're doing the contemplative meditation with it. We're doing the meditation, and then we're sitting in the silence. So it's all three together that deepen our consciousness. And it's the deepening of our consciousness that is going to reveal to us eventually that there is only one power. Hearing about God is omnipotent doesn't do a thing. Hearing that God is omnipresent doesn't do a thing. Experiencing the presence, experiencing the omnipotence, experiencing the omniscience, or having what feels like a revelation. Sometimes you'll get something that you just know to the core of your being is true, is truer than this out here. Okay, that kind of a revelation, that's what Joel calls a revelation. That kind of thing will happen. This is the kind of work we need to do, and in proportion as you do this, will your consciousness expand, deepen, and will you make progress, rapid progress in this work. So that's what I was given that we need to do. Let's see. says here, specifically for scripts, take the truth that corrects the script lie into meditation and ponder it until the silence is present. Then let grace do the work. Wait for a click.
Could you repeat that, please?
Sure. Take the truth that corrects the script lie into meditation. Ponder it until silence is present. Then let grace do the work. Or ponder until we've arrived at the recognition of oneness. If it's not silence for you, if it's oneness, but ponder until you're experiencing the presence of God, and then wait for peace or silence to settle on you. And when you're in the silence, in the presence, things are happening. They're just not happening at the intellectual level. They're just not happening at the rational level. You can be given lots and lots of truths and never have a hint about it intellectually, because the download from spirit to your true being is outside of mind and outside of rational. So you can get a lot of truth, and the first you know specifically what it was is that you talk different, or you explain things, you suddenly discover you know something, and when you reach for a sentence, it's suddenly there. I get that a lot when I'm meditating. I get what I'll call clicks. It's not a click, but I get this. It is a little deepening, a little click of a deepening, you know. And I know that I just got something, and I don't have a hint what it was, but I know that I just deepened. Okay, and that's as a result of doing this kind of work. Yes, please.
So since doing this work, I've had a pretty good meditation practice. Since being in this class, though, I keep falling asleep.
Okay.
What do you do do you fall asleep in your meditation?
Sometimes I do. I usually make sure I'm rested well enough, and I make sure I sit up straight, and I make sure my head is not resting on something so that when I fall asleep, the head falls over and wakes me up. I do things like that, but when I'm in this process of listening to Joel and getting downloaded, there's just no question of going to sleep. I mean, I'm very present during that process, often for the whole 3 hours. Sometimes, typically or sometimes, like maybe it's done at the end of 2 hours or something, or 2 hours and 15 minutes or something, I'm done, and then I sit back, and then I make sure I still sit vertically, I don't go back in the recliner. If I go back in the recliner, I'm asleep. So I make sure I sit up vertically, and sometimes I may just sort of doze. Like that happened a little bit this morning, but I sort of dozed a little bit, and I don't mind. So what, I've had the download, I've had the present, clearly I've had what I needed for today, because if there was more, it would still be coming. So another thing, vis-a-vis what you're saying, sometimes when I meditate, I don't get anything at all. I don't hear anything, I don't feel anything, I don't get anything at all, and then I go down and I walk down to Java Man for a cup of coffee, and I'm down there sitting at Java Man having the coffee, and I feel a huge rush. Okay? It was working. It's fine. It's just outside of, it's not physical. It was working. So we never know what we're getting or anything like that. The point is that if you're sitting, stuff is happening. You're deepening. A friend used to call it blue-collar work, just clock in and clock out, Yes, Cynthia?
So regarding this, taking the truth that corrects the script, do you have any examples of that? I know that Script Teacher's one, or
we'll spend the whole next 5 weeks on that.
Oh, okay, good.
The point right now is to wrap up the first 5 weeks and give you insight into what's going on and let you begin starting these practices, and then maybe we'll come up with a list of scripts and contrary and truths that counteract them. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm getting what you're saying. So you mentioned something about contrary examples not being as, I don't know what you just said, but I thought I heard you say something like that.
I said they're human.
Human, okay. So then should we...
They help manage, that's good. They help manage the script. They allow you to have enough peace that you can go into the silence. If you're not managing your script, you're not doing any of this stuff I'm talking about.
Okay.
Your kid is yanking you out of the meditation, et cetera, et cetera. So we deal with it humanly. We learn to manage our scripts. We learn to have some reasonableness in our life. And then this process that becomes possible.
So So then we do that, but then the next step is going to be to go deeper and look at the specific truth.
It's always to go deeper, to go higher, whatever you want to call it.
Is it possible that the truth come through? I know Christy had that example, but that kind of took care of a lot of the script stuff.
Let's don't talk about specific examples. Let me go through the process right now. I mean, everything's possible. Anything's possible. Miracles happen. All of your scripts could be listed out of you in this moment, instantaneously. We'll deal with all of this deal by deal. And obviously this class is not going to be over in 10 weeks. It'll be formally over, but we'll see what we need to do at that point. I was listening to a particular Joel tape, and the question of healing our scripts came through. Listening to a Joel tape talking about healing fear. I said, wow, that's close enough. I'll listen to this puppy. And his first statement is, there is no healing, just the recognition of lies. Step one, and I'm going to give you guys this, the reason I'm learning how to transcribe this is so that I can put this stuff out so that we can give you guys handouts. Step one, the belief in the scripts we experience is impersonal. It's hub. The hub we have accepted is what is being rebroadcast through us. So the first thing to get is that this script belief that I have is impersonal. And Kathy talked about that, and a couple of you talked about that. Get the fact that my script is really impersonal. It's Hub's script, not my script. It's Hub's script inadvertently accepted by me. Okay. Step two. Hub has no power. Hub does not have the power to express it through me once I have realized that God is the only power. That's why I said that the first step earlier is to realize that there's only one power. Hub does not have any power. Hub is just out there, available to be accepted. Joel uses the word temptation. We're tempted to accept the lies of Hub. But there's no power. There's nothing that makes us, switch channels. It's just like listening to a station on your radio, if it's got bad information, you just dial to another channel. And the original channel has no strength to take over your television set. Okay? So once we have realized that God is the only power, our scripts cannot express. Once we've specifically seen the truth. Okay? Hub can only operate in a consciousness that has two powers, consciously or unconsciously. So even though you think, well, I know there's only one power, if unconsciously, deep down inside, you still think there's more than one power, Hub can still operate. For example, how many of you are considering getting a flu shot? There's power. That's another power. That's the belief that germs have power. We must consciously know that Hub has no power to change God. You get that? Hub has no power to change God. God is what God is. And God is expressed as you, so you are what you are, and Hub has no power to change what you are. It's only a belief in mind that changes the appearance of what you are when it's accepted. So, universal human consciousness doesn't change who I am, but if I accept the lies of universal human consciousness, then my mind will change my concept of myself, or you, or anybody else. We are destroying specific beliefs in other powers as we specifically identify the lies, scripts, and realize the corresponding truth. This is a conscious deprogramming of ourselves and our conditioning. And here's where he says, until our hub receiver is completely destroyed, we must consciously and constantly present truth to every lie. I had catch the glitch, identify the lie, present the truth. And that's why the human work is important, and that's why the stuff we've been doing to this point is important. You have to have those tools if you're going to do this work. And Just a comment. Hub does not need to be destroyed or even risen above. Just ignored. Okay? Not up there, it's all in here. All I got to do is change my mind. Oops, change my mind. Don't believe that.
Was that all in one tape?
Yeah. Want to hear the rest of it?
I want the tape.
Yeah. The list, and these are my additions to it too. Joel doesn't use these words, obviously. I'm paraphrasing, but this is what came out of listening to that one tape. Okay, I got 19 points in the first hour and a half. The list of contrary examples is a human step to quell the fear, so that the spiritual steps can be taken. And then here's another one. The reason that knowing the truth, in other words, just doing the reading and such like, knowing the truth isn't sufficient, is that the truth, in quotes, isn't the truth. We work about knowing the truth, but when we know the truth, unfortunately, that's not the truth. The truth is God. The truth is the presence of God, and it's absolutely ineffable. Love that word in the F workshop. It's absolutely inexpressible. No statement of truth is truth. Statements of truth are merely pointers to truth, and they're good triggers for our pondering. These statements of truth are as close as we can say to truth, but they're just good triggers for our pondering. And they should be taken within, and you will feel clicks going deeper, and you'll get it. And then 6 months later, you'll take that same truth, and you'll take it within, and you'll feel a click, and it'll go deeper, and you'll get it. Oh, now I get it. And 3 months later, you'll take that same truth within. Oh, now I get it. And on and on and on and on and on as that truth becomes more real to us. And it's still not truth with a capital T.
Did you just say hub does not need to be destroyed, just recognized?
Ignored.
Ignored, that was the word. Thanks.
Ignored, yes, just ignored.
Thank you.
Nonsense. Lies. What we used to teach about how to treat universal parent. Let's see, we are not overcoming our scripts, we are just seeing through them. And just a couple more points. When the fear is gone and the script is broken, it's not because God has finally done something or that we have finally done something. It's because we're finally seeing what has always been and being who we have always been. Okay? Nothing's happened except a lie, a lying image that we construct with our own mind has been removed. Joel said somewhere, it was just wonderful, I forget exactly the word, but I'll try to paraphrase it, talking about, he says essentially healing is nothing. He says you imagined you had a disease, now you imagine you're well. Okay? Well, removing script is nothing. You imagine you have a script, and soon you'll imagine you don't. So study, listen, read, ponder until you have realized that God is the only power. Then apply that fact, capital F, to each fear specifically. Even when we have realized truth, there is the residue of our conditioning which must be addressed specifically over and over until it is erased.
Like acting as if, like you have that fear, but then you say, I don't have that fear. And
No, because that's a lie. If you have a fear, you have a fear. What you do is know the truth about that fear.
Or with the contrary example.
Or with the spiritual truth. Not with contrary examples that this is a story, but with the spiritual truth that the fear itself is based in a lie.
You can only get that with what you're talking about.
You can only
right now we can
you can only come to believe the truth through meditation. Okay? So Paul sort of kicked some butt for a while, and all I will point out to you about the amount of time you should meditate is that if you meditate 1 hour a day, if you do this work, meditation 1 hour a day, you are spending less than 5% of your time on the only thing that will have any effect about how you feel about yourself 5 years from now. And like I say, my time is cranked up to 3 hours every morning, and I just wouldn't conceive of shortening that because of what happens during those 3 hours. So, and I'm not nearly beginning to suggest you do 3 hours. This has come after a long amount of time, but I am suggesting that you seriously consider trying to spend 1 hour. Maybe working towards it. Yes, Stacy?
What about doing yoga when you meditate? Is that okay?
No. That's a distraction. It's a total distraction. It's a human distraction. It's bringing attention to your mind. It's bringing attention to your muscles. It's bringing attention to all sorts of stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with spiritual truth. Running is not meditation. Tai Chi is not meditation. Running is a nice source of, what are the ephrons? Endorphins. I mean, running can feel really good and you can get very peaceful, but no nonsense. We're talking about specifically increasing our spiritual understanding, and yoga has nothing to do with it. Yoga is human. I do yoga. I love going to yoga. It's very peaceful and it's good for my body, and there's all sorts of things, and I'm aware that it's a very pleasant piece of humanhood. And I recommend to other people that they go to yoga. My particular class, in fact, I invite people to, because I had such a good experience there. But it doesn't deepen my spiritual understanding, and I can do yoga for the rest of my life and it won't touch my script. Yes, please.
Okay, you said healing is nothing we imagined. Healing is nothing. We imagined we were ill, and now we imagine we are well. Well, how do you when you say alcoholism is a disease, but if there was really no disease, how does that all fit in? I'm stuck with that.
Well, let's work on that kind of thing individually if you want to.
Okay.
I did get another thing. For all of you dedicated 12-step people, the fundamental truth is not that we are powerless over, the healing truth of alcoholism is not that we are powerless over alcohol. The healing truth is that there is no power in alcohol. But AA is quite correct in that recognizing our powerlessness over alcohol is a step towards recognizing powerlessness, and it's a step in the right direction, which allows us to get to the 11th step where perhaps we can discover that there is no power in alcohol, that alcohol is powerless.
Keith here, I can confirm that in that once you take the alcohol away, all the issues are there. Matter of fact, they get quite bigger. And only to realize it wasn't the alcohol anyway. That was the symptom.
Sure, yeah. Yep. And
Now let's get to work.
Joel talks about alcoholism, and he says if lots of people write him, apparently women used to write him for healings for their alcoholic husbands. And his point is, well, don't try to convince him that alcohol has the power to do bad things to you. Remove from him the belief that alcohol does good things for him. So that, because he's drinking because of what alcohol will do for him. So if he recognizes that alcohol is powerless to do good as well as evil, then the whole thing dissolves. I don't want to get into the details of these. I'm presenting them to you. I will get them typed up and put them on the website, and you can use these as the points to ponder, item by item, for as many pondering points as you want to do. Megan?
Yet again, I have a stupid question. But I dream almost every night, my stories. I'm constantly rejected, abandoned. When hopefully this is successful, will those be gone? Because in my entire consciousness, I don't have those scripts, so I won't even dream them.
Right. Yeah, of course. Now, okay, the only other piece of business we have is in homework type stuff to look at for the next 2 weeks. In chapter 4, week 4, there's a couple of pages on fantasy scripts and fantasy behaviors, which some of you have gone ahead and looked at, and all of you read that now. Let's finish the package. Let's finish the script package entirely. So learn what fantasy scripts and fantasy behaviors are, and it tells you what column 3 and column 4 of the list are. That's column 3 and column 4 of the 2-column list we have currently of scripts and resistance behaviors. So there's an exercise there to expand your 2-column list into a 4-column list. And then in week 5, tearing up hidden scripts, one of the things is make a list of contrary examples. Then ignore the stuff about giving up our fantasy scripts, giving up our resistance behaviors, giving up our fantasy behaviors. Just ignore that stuff. There's no sense reading that. That's humanhood stuff. But do read the stuff more on fantasy scripts and fantasy behaviors, and read the stuff. There's a box here called Script 102, the 4-column script analysis method. Read that and start doing that. That's the thing to do whenever you discover that you're in a script event or have had a script event. When you're in your nightly inventory, you're looking back at your script event. Take it through the 4 columns. Look at what happened, identify the script, see what resistance behaviors may have led to it, or perhaps see what your fantasy is about that script and see what fantasy script behaviors led to it. Because the thing about fantasies, we got a couple of minutes. Usually for each script we have a fantasy about something that will happen. Deus Ex Machina thing is going to come in and resolve this whole fantasy, this whole script, okay? And we usually have behaviors that we do that are designed to make the fantasy come true. And because we don't really believe the fantasy, it's just a hope, it's not a belief, what happens is that pursuing the fantasy usually gets our script read. So, doing a resistance behavior will get your script read. Doing a fantasy behavior will get your script read. Okay? And that's what I want you to see. And part of the humanhood seeing this whole mechanism, I want you to see how sometimes it's the thing that caused your script read was the pursuit of a fantasy. And my favorite example is adults who are going home for Christmas to mom, and they're looking for the snow on the Christmas tree and fire in the fireplace and the turkey and everything and mom's love and all that sort of stuff. And they're hoping that they will go home and finally experience Christmas with their family. And their mother has demonstrated for 50 years that she's absolutely incapable of love, but the fantasy continues that, well, this time it's going to be different. I have to go home, because of a resistance behavior perhaps, but I have to go home. It certainly is a fantasy behavior, pursuing that fantasy. I want to go home. My mother should love me. Maybe she will this time. Or in relationships with somebody else that have broken up, and because of the karmic dance, because they didn't work, because the script reads were violent, and so you're apart for a while, and before long you start thinking that he'll be different this time. And it happens all the time in AA that you see couples together and then they're apart and then they're together and then they're apart, because when they're together they can't stand each other because they're reading each other's script, but when they're apart they're now in their script of I'll always be alone, such like, and they look at the one that perhaps that has potential and go back. And the fact is that, since we're mostly ladies, I'll put it in a female sense, he won't be different until his consciousness changes. And your experience of him won't be different until your consciousness changes. So there is no sense going back to him or going home for Christmas. If it's been your experience that doesn't work, it still won't work until your consciousness changes. Okay?
Can I sit? Okay.
Well, hold on one
It's okay. It's like I'm in shock right now. It's so cool.
Yeah, I see.
Great.
I was watching that, yeah. So, for that reason, we want to add the fantasy scripts and fantasy behaviors to our list so that we have the whole package. And that really completes the script work. We now know everything we need to know about script, I believe, and we know everything we need to know about managing script and finding some peace with our lives while we continue this work, because this process of pondering and sitting and such like is not a 5-week process. But every little click that you have, every deepening that you have, whether you know what it is or not, is a change in your consciousness. And since your experience is your consciousness, your experience has just changed. And it has changed for the better, because the click is towards realizing the perfection of all of existence. So every little incremental bit that happens during this process will change your experience positively. That's another reason I do this work 3 hours every day, because I'm greedy, and that's why I'm really looking forward to these people being here next weekend that's our third gathering. For the gathering is because there's some really high people going to be here, and we're going to sit together for 8 hours, and we're just really going to get high, and I'm just not over getting high yet. So we're really going to get high, and whether I get any realizations or anything like that, or anybody says anything, last gathering, nobody ever said anything. So there was no intellectual knowledge gained, but nonetheless, my experience must change as a result of sitting in the presence of these people for 8 hours. So, all right, I'm done. That's what I have to say to wrap up this half of it, and we still have some time, so now jump in, anybody, anything, wide open.
I'll say that
please.
Quickly.
Please.
I'm so glad you said that about fantasy, because I got this phone call from my ex-husband I don't talk to, I have no reason to, and I saw his phone, and I answered, and he was enraged, and I hung up, no problem. And then he called back, and someone said, "Why'd you pick up?" Well, I had a fantasy that he would all of a sudden be struck normal. That's all it was. And I hung up again, and I was like, thank you.
You betcha.
I had a fantasy.
Do you get that the idea that you might be able to fix him or her, or improve him or her, or straighten him or her out, etc., is a fantasy?
Yeah, totally.
The idea, well, he looks or she looks really good, and I see all this stuff, but we can work through that, Well, it may be if you're doing spiritual work meditating together, but if you're going to just go over this stuff with her, it ain't going to happen. Her consciousness needs to happen, or my consciousness about how I see her needs to happen, or both.
So what is the spiritual truth to the I will always be alone script?
The spiritual truth to the I will always be alone group is I will always be one with God. Add one more L to the alone and realize that you are eternally all one with God. And there is only one. And that one is blissful.
I have a question. You said
Please.
to cross off giving up our fantasy scripts and fantasy behaviors, and then is that it?
Just don't work on, the tools for tearing up scripts. We're no longer humanly trying to tear up scripts. We're going to God to get our scripts dissolved. So, the idea that I can stop my fantasy behaviors is a myth. The idea that I can stop my resistance behaviors is a myth. As long as I have the fear, I have the compulsion. And we used to talk about, give them up on the cases where you can risk doing that and such like, but that's all humanhood. And the fact that I'm working on giving up my resistance behaviors is sustaining my script. I'm saying my script is here and the resistance behaviors are here, and I've got to work on them, and that sustains them. And that's not what we're doing in this approach to the work. That's a radical difference. We're also not going to do any of the kid work. We're not going to go through the other half of this book, the kid work. We're not going to do any of that. The step 5 of the script work is drop all concern, and what we're doing is through the humanhood, we're striving to the point where striving to arrive at the point where we are no longer concerned about our scripts, which we do as a result of managing them. When they stop killing us and stop destroying our relationships and stop costing us jobs, and when we get to the point where that's just my script, then we drop all concern. But that's the end of this. That's the end of the human game, is getting to the point where you recognize, it's just my script. it's such a great place to be. Oh, it's just my script. Are you hearing that? Oh, that's just my script, rather than a traumatic, death-threatening thing.
Wow.
Yep. What else? That was 2 pages of the stuff I got this week. There are 5 pages. We have a bunch of stuff coming. We're going to do a class on impersonal. We're going to do a class on forgiveness. We're going to do a class on I don't know what else, but there's lots of topics here. There's many more topics than there are classes. So I don't know what we'll do, but we will certainly talk about impersonalization, and we will certainly talk about forgiveness and things like that. Yes?
I'm just kind of piggybacking on your question, but because I'm thinking about what is the specific truth for I will always disappoint you, and do they all just come back to I will be all one with my higher power, with God?
Yeah, well, we can find different words.
Yes.
But, yeah, the answer to that is God is not disappointed in itself. God does not disappoint itself. God is not disappointed in itself. It's inconceivable that God, as you, can disappoint in itself. And what you're calling you is the lie, is the illusion, is the imagination. So, specifically, God doesn't disappoint itself. Or any aspect of itself. Wow, that was a download. All right, let's be quiet for a minute or two. Put a seal on this. I hope to see some or all of you next Saturday and or Sunday. And I hope Dragon can transcribe better. I need to learn how to talk distinctly. Love y'all. See you in the next 2 weeks. Feel free to call. Feel free to call.